Hey, I'm Mo for YouTube videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. A lot of those conversational commentary videos have been, so far, about Alexa Nikolas and Eat Predators and the whole sort of fiasco that has devolved into ever since the release of Quiet on Set, a documentary miniseries that was a backdoor pilot for Drake Bell's redemption arc, really. I made a video shortly after the release of Quiet on Set, and long before Paige Christie sent me this beautiful microphone, and even longer before I would learn how to use it. I was really concerned about what I and a lot of other people identified as a pretty immediate shift in Alexa Nikolas's priorities with Eat Predators following the release of Quiet on Set. Like I said before, I've already made videos about this, so it shouldn't be a huge surprise to hear me say I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, about what I've heard about the beginnings and origins of Eat Predators versus what it turned into and when it turned into that. There have been, I think, a couple different turning points where Alexa really was losing the plot before this most recent plot losing, which I have already made a video about recently. That's the thing, okay? So as I said, I've already been talking about Alexa Nikolas. I've already even talked about the beef that I'm talking about in today's video, which is, you know, as evidenced in whatever I decided the title is. We're talking about the Christy Carlson Romano and Corey Feldman, but Corey Feldman is really just a proxy, versus Alexa Nikolas beef, re The Vulnerable podcast. This was one of like 7 notable beefs that I split my first Alexa Nikolas Why I Can't Stomach Eat Predators video up into, and look, I still really like that video, but it was made by somebody who had a whole lot less confidence talking to a camera than the person who's talking to you right now. So thank you very much to everybody who has already watched that and is coming back for this too. I'm leaving the old one up. I've referenced it in enough of my other videos, and especially I think the way that it maps out the evolution of my feelings towards Alexa is helpful. But I do want to revisit something that I covered very briefly and really non-chronologically in my first video about Alexa Nikolas and the failings of Eat Predators. So yeah, no pressure to have already watched those initial videos. If you did watch those initial videos, a lot of this will sound familiar, but not all of it, because more things obviously have happened in the world of Alexa, not since my last video and now, at least not to my knowledge, but between when I recorded those ones and now, certainly. So we have more context to go through. We have fallen even further out of the coconut tree, I suppose. Let's get into it. Just to give like a little summary of our key players for today's beef, and we can do this for all of the other ones as well as we go back through them. I'm certainly talking about the hypocrisy of her whole Kesha thing, because I really don't think she should get away with going to that Drake Bell concert with the way that she acted towards Kesha. But for today's study here, our key players are Alexa Nikolas. Obviously, I make these videos as if you already know who Alexa Nikolas is. She is the quote-unquote founder, though there have been arguments about that by other founding members, and, you know, Alexa has attempted to refute them, but I find those arguments pretty valid. Another thing that was covered a bit more in depth in that first video, if you can put up with me having less camera presence in that. Just for a frame of reference, like, that was March when I made those videos, and then I had only started the previous December. So like I was very much still learning. I am still very much learning. But I'm also like, it's just a lot easier to talk about this stuff knowing not only that people agree with me and are like grateful for my ability to voice these things, but also that there are like over 6,000 of you. That's wild. Thank you very, very much to everybody who has subscribed to me. I really, really appreciate it. Okay. So before we get started, I'll just give you a quick little rundown of the key players here in this whole situation. Alexa Nikolas, who I assume if you've clicked on this video, you already know. I very much structure those videos this way. And she was on Zoe 101 for the first 2 seasons when she was a teenager. We'll hear her talk more about that later. The other major player in this is Christy Carlson Romano. Christy Carlson Romano is the host of the Vulnerable podcast, an episode of which we'll be going over in today's video, and she was a Disney child actor. And our third key player, he's more tangential, but I'm still listing him here, especially because he made the title of the YouTube video, is Corey Feldman, who was, like Alexa, a guest host on that Vulnerable podcast that Christy Carlson Romano runs, and who was in The Goonies, and who, crucially for this conversation, is both a survivor and an alleged perpetrator of sexual assault. Which is honestly, I said we'll get more into him later. We'll be talking about him more later, but that's, as much as you need to know about Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman is Drake Bell before Drake Bell. Alexa certainly does not see it that way, but I do. A lot of people in my comment section do. Corey Feldman, Drake Bell, it's the same. They're the same picture from The Office. It's the same. So Christy Carlson Romano, like I said, she was in Even Stevens, she was in Kim Possible, she was Kim Possible, she voice acted Kim Possible. Christy Carlson Romano has tried a few times to find some relevancy, to use a word that would piss off Alexa. She's tried some different things, just sorting by most popular here to get some clips. Christy spoke about Shia LaBeouf and why she doesn't speak to him anymore, and I believe that this was around the time of the Don't Worry Darling stuff, and she's jumped from thing to thing as she's had something that she feels like she has to say about it. She's also done some cooking stuff, specifically nostalgia cooking. Christy's entire bit is nostalgia, don't you think, Jojo? Yeah? Say more. Yeah, tell me more. What do you think? Christy's whole bit is nostalgia. There's actually, I don't like Alexa anymore, clearly. So it may be a little bit strange that I am recommending a video from somebody who does, or at least did like her. But there's a channel by the name of Cheyenne on YouTube. I'm going to link to their video in the description below. I linked to it in my first Eat Predators video, and I said this there. I'll say it again. I really enjoyed that video. That video also kind of opened me up to be like, okay, maybe I can commentate on this kind of thing too. Cheyenne was very much more on Alexa's side of things. We knew a lot less about Alexa at that point. I will say that. I'm not meaning to speak for Cheyenne and say that their opinion has changed. I have no reason to believe it has, other than just, we're all on the same internet looking at the same thing. I really liked what Cheyenne had to say in their video. It was called When Trauma is Trending, and it was about this disagreement between Christy Carlson Romano and Alexa Nikolas. I think it's definitely worth a watch, and it has a lot more criticism of Christy Carlson Romano. I'm not necessarily pro Christy Carlson Romano, other than that I'm gonna throw her a few bones a couple times in this video. I think Cheyenne's estimation of Christy Carlson Romano, of being that she's just a capitalist at heart, and that's gonna inform all of her intentions, really makes a lot of sense. But I think, if I had to pick one, I'm gonna go for a capitalist over a grifter. Because Christy Carlson Romano hasn't really, at least convincingly, pretended to be something she isn't, to what I've seen. She's just been very nostalgia bait. Check out, like I said before, she did the literal cooking show. The way she describes it.
But one thing I can guarantee to you is that we are going to be throwing it back to the good old days. So if you guys want to go down nostalgia lane, make sure you subscribe.
Which is kind of I'm speaking for her here, but it seems to be very sincere when she says the good old days. It's clear she really wants back in at Disney, maybe, and that kind of affects, I think, some of the decisions she makes.
I've been meaning to talk about this for a while, and I'm finally ready to talk about it, so here's what it's like working for the Disney Channel. First of all, I just want to say it's amazing.
That's a lot of speculation. I think Christy Carlson Romano really wants a reboot, and Alexa has never felt like that is in the cards, because that's never been in the cards for Alexa, but Christy has and will continue to happily toe the party line for Disney Channel, DC as she calls it in some of her little vlogs. But yeah, she now hosts the Vulnerable podcast, which has often a lot of guests who were also former child actors or child stars, like Allison Stoner and Mara Wilson and Heather Morris from Glee. and Alexa Nikolas as of November of 2022. And this is a whole long story we're getting into in this very video. Vulnerable isn't Christy Carlson Romano's only podcast. She actually is like the CEO and founder of this company called Podco, which seems to be responsible for like the plague of rewatch shows. They're nostalgia-bait podcasts, usually for fans of long syndicated shows, Wizards of Waverly Place, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. That's another offshoot Alexa beef video. We're not getting into it in this one, but Christy Carlson Romano is very adjacent to all of this. A Full House one, apparently, which I guess makes sense because she mentions Jodie Sweetin in that episode that is somewhat lost media of Vulnerable with Alexa. And then also one called Big Name Bitches, which I don't know anything about and don't really want to watch, but I know that it has the woman who played Chelsea on That's So Raven in it. And I think she's a nurse now also. She was beefing with JoJo Siwa last I saw. That feels like a good enough baseline to get into it. So let's talk about that episode of Vulnerable first. As I've already mentioned, it is somewhat lost media because Christy Carlson Romano deleted it. Alexa would later make a video responding to the fact that Christy Carlson Romano deleted it, and we obviously know that with the gift of hindsight, but I figure let's look at the podcast just as it was and where Eat Predators was at, or at least how Alexa was presenting it was, as of November of 2022. Reference here, Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died came out in August of 2022. Eat Predators had previously existed and was focused on the music industry up until that point, and then it pretty much changed focus entirely to Nickelodeon. I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's just get into this Vulnerable podcast.
Welcome to this episode of Vulnerable with my guest, filmmaker, former child actor, and advocate, Alexa Nikolas. Alexa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Hell yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this
I'm
is a
really
really
happy
good a moment in time for a lot of voices, a lot of people that need us to sit down and have this conversation.
I agree. I feel like the time has come. Like it feels like things are brewing.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so I have clipped out some dead air, some repeated sentences, some things that just don't really matter as much for what we're talking about here today. And I went ahead and put this on, at times 1.4, but usually like 1.3 speed, just because, you know, I respect your time. If you wanted to sit and watch the whole Alexa Nikolas, Christy Carlson Romano episode, you would just go do that. So here are the parts of it that I find interesting, and honestly, to be so real with you, parts of it that I find interesting for our purposes, like not necessarily parts that I just would find interesting for the sake of like getting much out of this conversation. You'll probably see what I mean.
Yeah.
It really does.
There's so many people who want to help, but don't know how. And I think that the first step in all of this is organizing, which scares
Number
people.
one. Oh, it scared me. It's a lot of work to organize. Organizing is probably the hardest part, I would say. It takes a lot of energy. Actually, I was telling my husband the other day, I was like, now I get why people don't really do this.
You're like, why change never happens?
Yeah. Because it's so much work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, especially with the toddler too. Like organizing Eat Predators I'm like actually shocked that it's as organized as it is. I didn't think that was going to be as natural and organic as it's become, but it really just kind of has like a life of its own pretty much at this point.
Notice how that almost sounds like collective language. Like, of course, yeah, it would take on a life of its own if it has several other activists at the helm, but that is distinctly not the way that Alexa would like it to be characterized. I thought her referring to Eat Predators as taking on a life of its own was really interesting because I can tell from the timeline that this is before a lot of the people who would later leave had been chased away by Alexa. Some of them already had, but I mean, you just really would not know that there was anyone else at all from the way that she speaks about Eat Predators to Christy. Like, she was using the collective language outside of the podcast at this point, to my knowledge. But here in this conversation on Vulnerable, Alexa really makes it sound like as of November of 2022, or I guess whenever in October this might have been filmed, that she and her husband, Miko, were the only people who had anything to do with Eat Predators. And look, I know we all watched that live last week, or my video about it, where she got really upset and was saying how it's like super misogynistic for anybody to question whether or not Joe Dunn had anything to do with the beginning of Eat Predators by introducing other activists to each other and suggesting they connect. But I think that she's so focused on that because what a great gotcha it is. What a great excuse it is to just continue erasing a bunch of other women and activists and not be called out on the fact that she's doing it, since at least she's also discounting the contributions of a man and insisting that she herself get the credit. It is just genuinely nasty work. I mean, so much of what Alexa does here in this podcast and otherwise is.
Oh, wow.
That's what I feel. Like, it's like I make a decision, or I think I made a decision, and then something happens where it kind of leads me into a different place, and it's like the right place. Like with each protest.
Ah, yeah.
Like I have to choose where I'm going, you know, and usually I'll pick a place, and then afterwards something will pop up, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually supposed to go over there. And it just kind of has a life of its own. Like I've let go of the steering wheel, and I'm just kind of moving with it.
When you
instead
say
of trying to
something will
control
come
it.
up, you mean like permitting or like
Yeah, like
your
I'll-
just own choice?
Someone will come forward about something, or I'll end up, getting a DM from someone or find a new survivor, and it kind of will dictate where I'm going next.
I also want to call attention to Christy's questions here, because I do think we kind of see in real time, not quite yet, but maybe some beginnings of it here. We see in this podcast Christy realizing, I think, that Alexa probably knows a little bit less than she's letting on about all of this. I mean, I just thought there was something a little bit entertaining about Alexa using, and then something pops up and we go over there to mean, like, we make decisions on a split-second basis to begin with, and Christy assumed that it meant we have a plan and sometimes we have to deviate from that plan as something comes up. Just an interesting mismatch. Anyway, Alexa continues, and this next part kind of also rubbed me the wrong way, as it does, like, every time she name drops Me Too as a movement.
It was kind of wild because Eat Predators sounds scary and edgy, but really it just comes from Eat the Rich. So that's what inspired it. And it's not, it's edgy. It's way more edgy than Me Too in the sense of it's not just Me Too. It's like Eat Predators. But I also kind of find it fun.
I'm not sitting here and arguing that Me Too was some kind of perfect movement or even that it solved more problems than it created, but Alexa clearly lacks any form of respect either for Me Too as a movement or for the fact that Me Too did not come out of nowhere. Not only just that it existed before it was made to be about Hollywood, made by a black woman actually named Tarana Burke. We read a portion from Catherine Angel's Tomorrow Sex Will Be Good Again in my follow-up video about the Neil Gaiman allegations, and I also recently got a comment bringing attention to that on my the second Eat Predators video. Thank you. Yes, that is very important to mention when it comes to Me Too. It was co-opted by Alyssa Milano. It was originally created by a black woman, and then, as is said in that Tomorrow Sex Will Be Good Again portion, stories by black women were then really devalued compared to stories of white victims during the Me Too movement and beyond. Anyway, there is no respect for any of that in the way that Alexa speaks about Me Too, and it's something that once I noticed, I really can't unsee. Alexa seems to believe both that Me Too was the beginning of any advocacy at all to do with victims, and also that it was nothing really all that special because it didn't solve all the problems before she got there. And it doesn't acknowledge, like, how many waves of feminism ahead of Me Too were also solving some problems and not all of them. Like, as I'm saying, oh, Me Too didn't solve all the problems. Like, the suffragettes also did not solve everything, but they ended up gaining a whole lot more than was previously ever imagined. And, like, that was only possible because of what other women had done. And also another thing that left behind black women for really, really far too long. But, like, still, just, I think somebody who's positioning themselves as if they're doing something so feminism-coded should have a better understanding of whose shoulders they're standing on than I have literally ever noticed from Alexa, including when she read from Andrea Dworkin, because I really, say what you will about Andrea Dworkin, but to read Andrea Dworkin and then spell out the words for the YouTube censor is like, she would not like that. She used the words she used for a reason. But yeah, okay, sure, Alexa. Eat Predators is edgier than Me Too, which I am pretending that I believe that she has a fuller understanding of than just a nebulous, opened up a conversation around sexual violence in Hollywood and did not solve a bunch of problems. Let's continue with this conversation she had with Christy.
You know, it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is so important for me personally. You know, dealing with other survivors, most of the time we're wallowing in a lot of our trauma and being triggered, and then having many good days as well. But for the most part, being a survivor is hard stuff. And so with the protesting, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't an experience that felt too heavy.
Sure.
Like, we're talking about heavy things, but I want survivors to feel empowered and actually find a community of also fun. And so that was super important for me with doing these protests, was to make sure that it wasn't taking itself too seriously.
I was going to say, how do you make a protest fun?
Yes, you theme it. That's what I've been doing.
Okay.
Well, I've been theming it a little bit.
They talk about NDAs as well, and I agree that they're an issue and should be looked into, but I put some little pop-ups in the video where I'm a little confused about what she's saying, and I would love it if somebody who knows more than me could weigh in on that, about the legalities of this. Preferably somebody who knows more than either me or Alexa. If somebody weighs in the comment section, I would really appreciate that, because as I say in those pop-ups, I'm sure we've got some lawyers or at least some law students in the Nuance Corner. I know a few of you by name. I just didn't want to directly ask you. Just in general, I know we got a lot of smart people here, because I hear from you all the time, and I would love to hear from you about this.
NDAs are non-disclosure agreements, for those of you who may not know.
Yes.
They're things that are an item on the Eat Predators like, I guess, mission statement, because it's a huge problem.
It is.
Okay.
Because they're super broad. And the problem with them being so broad is that crimes fall into them. So like sexual assaults, you know, sexual violence in general can fall under these extremely broad NDAs. And I've come across survivors where not only are they not allowed to mention that there even is an NDA, but the NDA will say that they can't even speak to their therapist about it. So these companies are blocking survivors from their healing journey of their trauma.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
crazy.
Crazy. I mean, to put that in.
But isn't
and
the therapist, aren't they sworn by like legality? Like
you can subpoena them.
Yeah.
So
okay.
if you get into a
Wow.
lawsuit situation, then the therapist, that's another thing that a lot of lawyers that are, you know, representing alleged abusers, they really will go after the survivor's therapist as like a tool of harassment to make them scared of what's going to come out, what prescription pills have they been, you know, prescribed to kind of try and make them look like they're crazy. So with these NDAs, since they're so broad, you know, we have sexual assaults, you know, falling into these super broad NDAs. And they're so old school to the point where in litigation now in the state of California, you can't even sign an NDA about sexual harassment or sexual assaults. That's been done. But a corporation can still use an NDA about sexual assault in a work environment, as long as it's not litigation.
Okay.
So if, like, basically it's like pre-litigation, they call it, when you go to H&R and you're like, you know, my boss or my, you know, an employee sexually assaulted me or harassed me.
They say sign this?
Correct.
Okay.
They say sign this. And sometimes a survivor doesn't even have a lawyer present. You know, they're feeling so pressured to sign it to keep their job. And
What do they do? What do they do after they sign it?
they get fired a lot of the time.
Oh, no
That's
shit.
the problem. Yeah, so I know a lot of survivors that once they sign the NDA, probably within like a few months end up getting fired. And they will pretend it's about reconstructing, you know, the company.
Yeah.
And they'll be high top earners, and they will.
And will they
fire
even
them.
get a decent package? Or are there
Yeah, they'll get a severance, but it's not like the same type of severance that, you know, these CEOs that are the abusers end up getting when they leave the company. You know, it's like.
So
Yeah. So let me know how real that is. Parts of it sound correct to me, like if you agreed to something without actually litigating it as a sexual assault in court, that you could be pressured at work to sign an NDA about that mediation. And I think for sure, yes, I believe people will find reasons to be fired after that, just the same way that any employer takes advantage of being at will. But this is kind of what I'm saying when I say that I think Christy was starting to realize during the interview that Alexa might just say whatever she's heard that sounds good, with the way that she begins really steering the conversation after this. Obviously, I'm watching with the hindsight that Christy later went on to take this video down, and that might be coloring my perception, but, like, I don't know.
do survivors come to you like
Yes,
a lot of times?
a lot
Do
of
you have like
times.
basically survivors in your DMs like every day kind of
I
thing?
do.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's horrible. I didn't realize the immense issue when it came to sexual abuse in the music industry, just the entertainment industry in general, until I came forward about my abuse.
Sure.
And once that happened, I couldn't believe how many survivors there were. It was like thousands and thousands and thousands of survivors, men and women. And once I saw that with my own eyes, I could never unsee that again. You know, once you see it, you're like, we have a problem.
So the conversation with Christy continues.
We spoke before she came on, and I felt like we talked, and it was a very beautiful conversation of two people coming together with sort of like a shared experience. Me, not with Dan, but I think there's a lot of parallels, and I think we can use this time together to kind of just clear the air on what is, and like also maybe like what the crazy conspiracies that you've heard of people, like some of these like, oh, the Illuminati and like human trafficking, like all this other crazy stuff. It's like most of that stuff is not true.
Yes.
But the stuff that is true, we're going to tell you.
Exactly.
So,
and actually, I feel like those conspiracies really most of the time end up blocking the truth because it gets so far over there.
I'd like to cut into this part since I have recently decided, especially, since she posted the link to those police documents, that Alexa Nikolas does not get a fucking inch from me. She's talking a real big game about conspiracy for somebody who only recently deleted a post with Sandy Hook tragedy denialism. I brought this up on Twitter a few weeks ago because Ronda Rousey posted to apologize for having shared similar posts in the past. Ronda hadn't actually ever even been caught and called out on it. It was her own conscience. Something I'm increasingly suspecting Alexa just apparently lacks, because she also has been called out on this, but she never acknowledged it, just quietly deleted. I want to say, and I'm putting this crisis actor one she shared on screen, even though I think that this is evil shit she posted, but I'm not posting the ones where she posted pictures that were just of people's bodies, because she apparently thought that it was funny that they were overweight. She would post that kind of shit with captions like hot and stuff about like turning around to take a picture of someone. If anyone knows of a time where she actually addressed this on stream, please let me know. I've heard that it may have been vaguely mentioned once. In any of the videos I've watched, though, she's certainly never taken actual accountability. But the posts have been deleted, and I and several other people on Twitter as well have confirmed that we saw these posts ourselves on the grid before she deleted them. I had to go look when I was first doing my videos in March because they seemed so unimaginably cruel that I was like, why is somebody making up that she would post this? So I scrolled all the way back and checked myself. They were still there at the time, and they're not anymore. They disappeared at some point after my first video, which I'm not saying they disappeared because of my first video. I'm just saying because timeline. But I just want that Sandy Hook thing she shared in our heads as she's preaching here, Let's continue.
That sometimes people can't really fully grasp the reality of it because they don't want to go into that, like, la la land, like cuckoo land, basically.
Right,
and so like they're afraid of getting into that space, and it's a bummer because it's like, it's not that, but it is this. And it's still just as important and heavy and valid. It's just not that.
And I also think that as a whole, what you're doing as a part of this movement for advocacy, especially when it comes to minors as well, is it's so valuable. Like we were trading some texts, and I sent you something that Allison sent me, and it was like this web of the structure of change and what was do you remember what it was called?
It was basically like all the different layers of like what you need to incorporate to make change.
Make
like from
change.
protesting, getting active.
Protesting was a big part of that.
It's major. It's old school, but it works.
But that's the thing, is
it's
like
fun too.
So much of what you're doing is so important for us, people like Allison and myself, to start to have as a part of our team, because we can't do it.
Right.
Or you already know what you're doing.
Right.
And it's like change can
sure.
really happen. And I'm starting to realize that. And of course, we'll start to
Many
talk
pieces
about,
though you need. Like it's
but
like
you're
you
fearless,
need.
and like I think a lot of people. So
Thanks.
I posted something recently that was like, I'm realizing that there's been child abuse in Hollywood, and like I'm realizing I'm the only person that really wants to, not only person, but I'm the person that's going to step up to do something, right? Like in general terms. And I got a lot of comments where people were like, be careful.
Oh yeah, I get that too.
Like you want to
I
stand for
agree.
something, and then like the weird stuff that comes out of that. But
Because of the Illuminati stuff, I think they really think, I mean, it is dangerous, but I would say probably the way that these types of predators, enablers within the industry function is more with lawsuits. You're not going to end up in the back of a car, but you're going to end up with court documents against you. And that's abusive litigation is a real thing. And abusers, enablers really use that as a means of control, of silencing, of making a public impact that they're like taking this seriously.
Okay.
They're like, this is serious. This is not our company, or this is not who I am. And people forget that defamation suits, you can really put pretty much anything in a lawsuit for the most part. They're not as serious as people like to believe they are. Okay. Most of the time, they're stretching the truth a little bit. They don't have, like, for example, a really good friend of mine, Kaylee, who is a survivor.
Also, I thought it was really interesting that she mentioned Kaylee by name here because I follow Kaylee on Twitter, and Kaylee has recently been tweeting about the beginnings of Eat Predators. So while Alexa took this opportunity to tell details of Kaylee's story and not, like, you know, introduce her as a founder, just a friend, I cut that part out, and I checked in and made sure it was cool for me to read from this Twitter thread from Kaylee, and especially given that we've already discussed in this video how much of a one-man show Alexa has been making early Eat Predators sound like, this feels like as good a time as any to segue into this. This was posted after Alexa's so-called final live stream. It begins. Alexa lied again so many times in her latest video about the origins of Eat Predators, I don't know where to start. All the founding members could sue her for defamation, theft, and emotional distress, but none of us want to deal with her alcoholic psycho-ass behavior anymore. Psycho is Kaylee's word, not mine. Eat Predators started because Joe Dunn and his associate Sam Maloney invited a group of survivors, I don't even want to use that word anymore because Alexa has tainted it so badly, to lunch one day, for the specific purpose of encouraging us to join forces in our advocacy work. We, me, Kaylee, Alexa, Social Martin, and Nomi Abadi agreed to join forces. We found out Diplo was playing a pop-up show the following week. Alexa suggested that for our first action together, we should protest at the show. We invited @WhoIsKBrown to come to the protest and work with us. Because Diplo was performing in front of a sign that said Eat the Rich, Alexa came up with the chant Eat Predators, which we all agreed to adopt as the name of our group. At the protest, Nomi had a disturbing interaction with Alexa, which caused her to stop working with us. Social and I weren't able to make it to the first protest, but Kay and Nomi did. After that, Kay and I helped plan and organize every single protest until the Nickelodeon one months later. We all gathered at Alexa and Miko's house several times to make signs and work out logistics. Social wasn't as involved in the planning, but she drove 6 hours round trip from San Diego to be present at every single protest, and came to many of the subsequent meetings that we had with Joe Dunn. We would meet him for lunch after many of the protests. He was very involved. Neela got involved shortly after we started. She and I built the entire tech/online infrastructure, something Alexa admitted she doesn't know how to do. We created the Patreon, the PayPal bank account to connect to the Patreon, the spreadsheets organizing everything, such as what benefits were owed to which Patreon supporters, which is probably why so many people didn't receive the t-shirts and other benefits they paid for after we left. I also turned an Instagram account that had already built up over 100,000 plus followers into the Eat Predators Instagram. And I'm just saying Alexa plugs this very same Instagram at the very end of this video. We'll see that later, but she doesn't mention any of these people that Kaylee is referencing, and she just referred to Kaylee as a friend of hers, right? Not as a founding member of Eat Predators. So weird. But Kaylee's thread continues. It's mind-blowing that Alexa claimed in her Truth About Cat 10 Barge video that no one else was involved at the beginning of Eat Predators besides Melanie and Elle. Neither Melanie or Elle was there at the beginning. Kay reached out to @PaveInfo to invite them to join our protests, and Elle came as a representative from Pave. Alexa connected with Melanie after we collectively decided to reach out to leaders in the Free Britney movement, which Melanie was a part of. If none of us had been involved in the beginning, why was Alexa okay with LA Magazine publishing this article in which Social and I were presented as founding members of Eat Predators? And then there are screenshots of the article backing up exactly that. They're on screen right now if you'd like to pause. This article was actually the beginning of the end for me. I was very disturbed by this quote. Nikolas is the founder of Eat Predators and its driving force. Each protest so far has been primarily organized by her to target specific groups or individuals. End quote. We had all equally formed the group together and had equally participated in the protests. The only extra thing Alexa did for the first protest was suggest that we protest there as our first action. Kay, Nomi, Social, and I never would have agreed to volunteer for a group Alexa was the founder of. We committed to it because we had agreed to join forces in an equal collaborative collective. In our conversations, it was always referred to as a collective. We never agreed for Alexa to be called the founder, and in fact, creating a hierarchy like that contradicted the idea that had been so appealing to all of us in the first place. The idea of joining forces as a collective. When I saw this article refer to Alexa as the founder and driving force, I told Alexa that I figured the reporter must have just assumed that, since she had a significantly larger following than the rest of us. I was afraid she had said that to the reporter, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I could see how the reporter might have made an assumption. We had all invested so much already, so I went into full sunken cost fallacy mode. More articles came out calling her the founder, and I convinced myself that it was the reporter's fault. When I talked to Alexa about this, I told her that because the press had started presenting her as the founder, it changed the dynamics between us all, and we needed to make Eat Predators a nonprofit ASAP so that it would be run by a board that would vote on decisions, to ensure that we continued to operate as a collective. We did not want to admit to ourselves how much she had slowly hijacked the whole operation in many ways until it became unrecognizable. She turned against every single person who had been involved in the beginning, pushed us all out, and replaced us with a new team who she falsely presented herself as the sole founder and creator of. Then she started making a lot of money off of the platform that we had poured our blood, sweat, and tears into building. There are so many instances of her lying about, bullying, and triangulating people, so many insane examples of her harmful behavior. I feel overwhelmed by it all and really don't even know where to begin. What's been shared publicly by me and others, it really is just the tip of the iceberg. That's just a really far cry from what Alexa presents, right? But again, back to the Alexa and Christy interview here.
Because defamation's a hard thing to prove. I mean, with the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp thing, we won't go into that, but it's a hard thing to prove. You have to prove the person was malicious, knew that they were lying, you know, and you have to have actual evidence of that. And if you don't have evidence of that, it's pretty hard. That's why First Amendment is what it is. You know, as Americans, we could say our opinion about something. We have the right to speak up. We're allowed to protest. You know, those are things that are rights that are,
That's true. People don't realize that.
As Alexa put it, I have the right to speak up. And, you know, for when she tries to say that me talking about this is bullying or victim blaming or whatever, you know, this is my form of protest against what she's doing with Eat Predators. Okay, and it's also interesting that she's claiming to have known and understood this years ago, but is now pretending like she has some kind of basis to call Kat researching for an article malicious defamation. That's a word she's been using a lot in her tweets about Kat, malicious defamation. It's wild. Is it that Alexa feels differently about that accusation being frivolous now than she did then, or is it just that she never actually cared about this other than to learn the words so that she could get some clout and then weaponize them as soon as she found a chance to? I don't know. I also found it interesting here, again, a moment where I think Christy Carlson Romano is realizing that Alexa might know a little bit less than she presents herself as knowing. Check out this moment where they're talking, like I said before, about Jodie Sweetin.
I remember speaking to Jodie Sweetin and her kind of illuminating that for me. She was like, look, I have, this is a right that I have as an American, and we plan it and we go through the right permitting structures and everybody knows what they're doing. Right. You have to make a choice when you're protesting if you want to get arrested, not want to get arrested, but if you're going to do that.
Right,
you're
going to plan.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you've gone into that that side of it. I mean, is that something that you've...
I haven't been worried about being arrested yet, just because they're fairly neat and small right now. You know, it's not a lot of people. It's hard to get people out during the day at 12 to 2, but I'm trying to make it lunchtime hours so
because
that
people are, the executives are leaving.
Exactly.
They have to see you and they're going and they're having people come in and meet
Correct.
you. Interesting.
So I structure it that way. So when meetings are coming through, like lunch meetings, they're having to come through.
Did that flag is a little bit off to you now that we know what a chameleon Alexa is? To just repeat, right, what's the plan? As if you do have a plan. And then when you're pressed, you admit you've never actually worried about that. Also, how has she not worried about that? I get that the protests weren't huge, but like just infographics that circled in 2020 by the time I went to my first like big actual protest for Black Lives Matter, that it was something that I needed to be aware of and prepare for. And I would hope that the people who organized it also were extremely aware of that. So if she was if she was the one organizing all these protests by herself, like, I don't know. Did somebody else have the plan for what happened if people got arrested, or was there just no plan for if Eat Predators people got arrested by anybody other than Alexa calling the cops? So, yeah, it takes Christy some time to get out Alexa's story, detouring a bit more through Alexa's version of how Eat Predators formed and came to be, the extremely Alexa-centric version, of course.
Sorry, what?
So it's only six weeks old.
Wait, Eat Predators.
It's only 6 weeks old.
You have made so much of an impact. So Jeanette McCurdy's book came out, and And your protest in front of Nickelodeon
Yes.
went viral.
It did.
Okay, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was like, first of all, with Eat Predators, I was really only focusing on the music industry because that's another thing when you're doing advocacy, you want to stay very targeted because if you start to generalize, you can't get what you want to get done because you get overwhelmed.
Okay.
So I made a commitment to the music industry specifically because I am a survivor of the music industry.
Sure.
And so I never thought I was going to go to Nickelodeon. That was never on my radar.
Okay.
But when Jeanette McCurdy's book came out, and a lot of reporters were calling me and being like, Dan's in the book, and I was like, well, what exactly is said about Dan, in the book? Is she really coming forward about details of Dan Schneider? Because I felt like I was almost the only one who came forward in like 2018 about him, and no one really listened. And I didn't have a book, it wasn't like, I didn't have a PR, I didn't have anything like pushing it. It was just me on Instagram, so I get why it didn't go anywhere.
We'll circle back to Dan Schneider, the creator of the Nickelodeon shows, later in this interview, but this was the first thing that she shared about Dan in the podcast.
But so I was shocked. And when I read it, it got me so upset. The NDA part is what really like upset me, is that they tried to silence her experience, and it was Nickelodeon. And from my own personal experience, I saw Nickelodeon enabling his behavior. Like,
Okay.
I saw it personally. The execs were on set.
Okay, how did they enable his behavior?
I would just see, like the wardrobe artist who was on set, she would be like massaging his shoulders in the tent. And then when I read in the Business Insider, expose on Dan Schneider, that was a common thing that was already mentioned in a lawsuit that he was, mentioned in.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, I remember that. And the execs would see that. They would all be sitting next to him and seeing all these female employees massaging him. Like,
Got it.
And then she spoke about her own grooming, something I am not here to cast questions about, but I am playing you a part of what she said here.
So with my career, unfortunately, my career got put on hold because of my abuser.
Okay.
He basically like forced me to go on tour with him at all times.
And when you say forced you, though, you were just like kind of isolated and...
Yeah, it was very manipulative. Yeah, isolated, super manipulative, basically telling me that since I've worked all my life, I deserve this break. It was that kind of manipulation. But then when I look back at it, I go, oh, interesting, how convenient for him. I was so isolated for most days out of the year, away from my family and friends.
And I'm playing you this part that I just think is really fucking ironic, given how old Drake Bell was at the time when he was recklessly endangering and distributing harmful material to a minor who he had known for years.
Because you have to remember I was 18 with him.
Yes.
And he was 35.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, 35. So he was so much older than me.
Something Alexa previously felt very strongly about, and then apparently just did not following the release of Quiet on Set once she saw the child inside of Drake Bell. So yeah, okay, now we are moving into the portion of the video where Alexa is discussing her history on Nickelodeon, and I want to just to discuss a few things here.
So, so you had mentioned that like Dan would be present at wardrobe fittings when you were 12?
Yes. Yeah. So there's like always like a curtain. I remember he was so close to the other side that I could hear like the chair, creaking whenever I was changing. Like he would like move and shift, and I could actually just like hear it because it was right on the other side. And I had to wear very, very short skirts to the point where I had to wear biker shorts underneath the skirts, and they had to cut the biker shorts because the biker shorts were longer than the skirts.
That's weird. Yeah.
That's how short the skirts were on Dan Schneider shows. And then so, that was a red flag for me. Him touching anyone on set is a red flag to me now, just because it was
Polaroid
children.
thing too, though, that you mentioned about the dollar bills and stuff.
A digital camera, and he would go around with money and ask to take photos of the kids' feet. And I remember my mom going, "Don't go over there." My mom actually said no to it, but I saw other parents allowing their kids to do it.
Yes. What the hell, man? Like, where was Jeanette's mom? Like, where was everyone's like parents in this whole situation? And
yeah, so I think the parents are also groomed by society itself. And so I think their intentions are mixed, where I think some of it is to give their kid what they think a better life, like have a dream, not be working a 9 to 5, at Starbucks per se.
First of all, 9 to 5 at Starbucks per se is very funny. None of my Starbucks store managers even worked a 9 to 5 at Starbucks. That's for like corporate and office jobs. It's just a tiny, this isn't like a huge thing, but it's just one of those tiny little tells where it's like, oh, if I didn't know that you also don't know anything about anything else you talk about, I'd let this slide. But now that you've published those police documents about a minor who your friend pled guilty to grooming, I don't want to give you an inch. 9 to 5 at Starbucks is funny. I'm going to dunk on it. I worked at Starbucks for like 3 years. I'm no longer above pointing out when something she says is like a little bit dumb and funny. even a manager who doesn't bother opening the store themselves is going to work like a 6 to 3. It's a coffee shop. Those open early so that the 9 to 5 people can have coffee before their 9 to 5. But Alexa has worked neither a 9 to 5 or a coffee shop job, so she just doesn't know that. And like, yeah, I mean, she wouldn't. She's a child actor. But again, just my particular coffee shop experience, 9 to 5 at a coffee shop makes me giggle, because like, no. I never saw like a bunch of people having a 9 to 5 at Starbucks, not steadily at least, which is what 9 to 5 implies. Anyway, Christy then talks about her own experience meeting Dan.
By the way, I've only met like in passing, and I got a creepy vibe. But
yeah, I mean, his presence is you feel it. I mean, everyone says that actually. Where'd you meet him?
I think it was like, I don't know, it was like some event or like City Walk or like something really random.
Totally City
And I
Walk.
remember him was like, hey, Christy, or something like that, where he like thought, it was almost like he knew me. And I was like,
No.
yeah, no, I don't know you. You're Nickelodeon, I'm Disney.
Yeah,
like, it was that
totally.
mentality of like,
Totally.
but even that's weird, dude. That
Yeah.
that like the Nickelodeon kids weren't like allowed to like be friends with the Disney
Yeah,
kids.
agreed.
Because God forbid we share our work culture together and have something in common with
That's
the
what
kids.
happened to me when I left. So when I asked to be released from my contract, Nickelodeon was first like, no. And then my mom said, well, this can get legal.
Okay, so your mom advocated for you.
Oh, my whole life. My mom is my best friend. But when they called to release me, they said, okay, we're releasing Alexa, but we have one request. And I was like, what? And they said, your daughter's not allowed to come to the Kids' Choice Awards or any Kids' Choice Awards after. And I remember hearing
And
it
how
and
old
going,
were you?
I was 13. And they punished me.
Because you left the show?
Correct.
Okay.
But what I realized was they didn't want me associating with any of the co-stars about my work environment experiences. They were trying to outcast me, which they always do.
I've never really understood why this whole getting banned from the Kids' Choice Awards is supposed to be so awful if she had quit and if she hadn't been friends with anybody on set already, but it's one of a lot of things in this section and in everything Alexa says about her time at Nick that's like clearly a personal wound, and I'm not going to police this part either. I'm just going to say it doesn't really feel that weird to me that if you're asking to be let out of a contract early, that they would then not invite you to the award show. Alexa doesn't see it this way, though. She sees it as an intentional isolation of herself from her peers, and she clearly sees her entire experience on Zoe 101 as having been that. We spend more time talking about that in a moment, but before she gets to that story, this is how she summarizes it.
Hold on, so
you're right.
you quit the show because of you were uncomfortable?
Oh, I got abused by Dan Schneider in an exec room.
Oh, but sorry. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, that's in my live. I mean, that's in the slime time.
Okay.
Yeah, so
would you tell me this story?
Yes, it's
would you like
horrible.
to? I want you to feel comfortable. You
I
can
can say like a smaller piece of it. Where,
Okay. Because I thought it was just the creepiness and the like what we talked about. So this is actually new.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No. I was like I quit the show because of the Dan Schneider abuse.
Wait, what happened?
So do you know the Britney Spears story?
No, I don't know any of this stuff.
Wait, this is amazing. I'm like filling you in. I'm filling you in. There's a lot.
Okay.
Which is like, whoa. Okay. That kind of thing is also, I guess, implied in Survivor of Nickelodeon and everything with the way that she talks about it, but that's quite a way to phrase it, right? That puts some specific implications in your mind, and I think in the mind of Christy too, as well, when she was reacting to that. Alexa does this a lot. She associates herself with the most visceral pain that anybody could have to do with something that happened. Calling bullying by co-stars abuse also rings this way to me. Like, it doesn't help her credibility because the claim that she's making isn't actually physical or sexual assault. It's being yelled at. And yes, that would be traumatizing, and I would not have coped with that well either as a sheltered child, but like, got abused in a room by Dan Schneider paints a picture that I think she likes to have people paint in their head when they're deciding exactly how seriously they want to take her. That's, I think, also possibly another reason why Drake was somebody who it seemed so beneficial to hitch her wagon to. That, like, associative assumption it carries that they're more similar than their experiences at Nick, as told by Alexa herself, actually really bear out. Let's get into those experiences so that you can see that I'm not just being mean. Okay, maybe I'm being a little mean. Maybe I'm being a mean girl, a mean kid, a mean adult.
Basically what happened was, we know for season 1 and season 2, there was problems with me and Jamie Lynn Spears. And unfortunately, the culture of the bullying from Jamie became kind of normal on set for everyone else to participate in.
Yeah.
And so I felt very isolated, and not invited to any of the gatherings purposefully, left out at lunchtime, wasn't allowed to sit with anyone, told I was too nice, I smiled too much, am I an alien?
You were 12 years old, dude.
Yeah, I was 12. I was like, of course I'm like a nice, but like whatever, that's my personality.
And your mom did get into it with producers, right?
The whole time. So through season 1, so they ended up letting go of the character Dana because she was abusing, like verbally bully style mode person. And it was like very, very uncomfortable. And at one point she even like pushed me into a rock. And it was like, okay, it's time for everyone to talk. And so my mom had a conversation with them, and I guess they ended up letting her go. And so in season 2, we had a new character, Victoria Justice.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like super stoked.
Yeah, she seems
about Victoria. She ended up not being sweet at all.
Oh boy, okay.
She's like layers. So she,
What the hell, man?
it was really bad. I was so excited because her mom dated my uncle like in college years.
Wow.
So when she was auditioning for it, my uncle called us and was like, oh my God, Victoria's auditioning for Zoe 101. I was so excited because I had no friend on set. And so I thought this is an unbelievable opportunity for me now to have a friend on set. And so I went to the testing and I read the lines with her at Nickelodeon, and her and I like hit it off. Like we were like best friends at first sight kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God, season 2 is going to be so much better than season 1. Like this is a new era. I'm going to have a friend on the show, and I can just look, it's the past. Everything else is the past now. And we were best friends for most of that season until one day, I think her and I ended up getting like in a tiff about a boy, but it was a very mundane argument. It was like girls. She was upset about something about a boy.
Okay.
And so I thought we were going to be fine the next day, but I show up on set and I open the makeup trailer, and Jamie's sitting in there and Victoria's standing, and the entire second season, Jamie never spoke to Victoria once because she was friends with me. So that entire season, Jamie did not feel the need to go towards Victoria since her and I were best friends. She had nothing to do with me, kind of.
Okay.
As much as possible, she just stayed away. So I walk into the trailer and they're whispering to each other, and they turn around to me and laugh. And I'm like, oh, no, this isn't happening again.
Yeah, that's horrible for you.
This is not happening again. So it was pretty triggering.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Alexa, you're just back at square one again. Just kind of put your head down and don't cry about it. Because every time you cry about it, execs get mad at you. And so just work, and not say anything.
Okay.
And so it just got progressively worse. And my mom then had to go again to the execs and say, hey, this is a problem again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Alexa's still put in this situation. The culture is not okay.
Yeah.
On set.
Yeah.
They did not care. They said, this is not called Nicole 101. It's called Zoe 101. And she has to suck it up.
Okay.
Literally just told me that straight
This
up.
sounds very, this is
is
very industry standard stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was just like, nope, no problem.
Yeah, you can
Don't
be
problematic.
replaced. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, Christy is being pretty empathetic, but I did nose laugh just a little bit at her being like, yep, that sounds normal. So then Alexa starts telling the Britney and Jamie Lynn Spears story, another one she's told on many a podcast, including with Sloan. Adam McIntyre actually just went over a time that she told this story. I'll link to that one in the description below. Adam, thank you so much for shouting me out in your video the other day. It really meant a lot to me. Shout out to all of the muckers who have found their way to my audience, both before and after Adam shouted me out on his live the other day.
Fast forward, it's our last day for season 2. And Britney's an amazing person. She has apologized to me personally.
Oh, wow.
Britney Spears apologized, but Nickelodeon hasn't. Isn't that funny?
What happened? I'm so invested.
It's so fucked. It's so fucked. So I go, Britney, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe Britney wants to step in and mediate. Like, this is so great.
Was your
like
mom with you?
Ian, the talent coordinator, lied to my mom, said he was bringing me to makeup and hair, and then brought me to Jamie and Britney's trailer without her knowledge. So that's what I was trying to say is like, what if it was a predator in this trailer and not Britney Spears and Jamie? And even with Britney and Jamie, it still was a dangerous situation. So it's like child endangerment, truly. And so I remember walking up into the trailer, and as I opened it, I remember turning to my right to say something to Ian, and he disappeared. When I opened the door, I see Jamie run to the back of the trailer. Like, she just runs. And Britney goes, come on in. And so I come in, the door got locked, and all of a sudden she just started yelling at me.
She's like,
this is time for
think
me to
about how
defend my
she
sister.
and she was probably just trying to be protective, but no, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like either way, it wasn't okay because I was a 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in retrospect, knowing the dynamic that was at place for her, it's like, of course that's what ended up happening. And
Oh, yeah.
like, oh my God, poor
You were like,
Britney.
yeah,
no,
right?
but seriously, she's in a horrible situation there. And she was like 8 months pregnant, so she was hormonal too. And I remember she was rubbing her belly while she was yelling. And it was like she was trying to calm herself. And you could just tell it was very unhinged in a way that felt like someone was manipulating her. And I see Jamie back there, and she's afraid to come up, but she's letting her sister do all of her
Yeah.
perpetuating the abuse again, but now with her sister.
Okay.
And so I start crying, and the entire trailer is just spinning. And I have an adult screaming at me saying, I'm never going to work in this industry again. And it's Britney fucking Spears. And so I'm sitting there just in shock. And I come barging in. My mom thinks I'm at makeup and hair. And I come barging in, screaming, crying, and I'm in fetal position in the bathroom in the trailer. And so my mom is like, what's going on? You know, what's wrong? She's freaking out.
Yeah.
But I can't communicate to her because I'm in a trauma flight mode,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to communicate, but I can't. And so she's screaming. I remember watching my mom just screaming. And it took 10 to 15 minutes for anyone to show up. And then all of a sudden I hear the knock on the door. Still no teacher. The teacher's with Jamie.
And then this story that Alexa is telling leads into the one about Dan abusing her.
Okay.
And so the door knocks and I see Dan Schneider come in. And he comes in and always, you know, his what now? You know, like I'm the problem again. And so he comes in, he's looking down at me, I remember, and he's like, what? You know, what happened? And I then was able to say, I said, Brittany yelled at me, Ian brought me into the trailer, and they told me I'm going to lose my job. Like, Brittany told me I'm going to lose my job. And Dan looks at me and just looks annoyed, and he steps out. And then he comes back 5 minutes later with a DVD player. You know those DVD players that used to have like the screen that pops up?
Yeah.
He comes in with that and he goes, here. He goes, will you go back on set now?
That is so weird.
Yeah, and there was 2 other execs with him who just flew out from New York that happened to be there for the last day of shooting.
Okay.
And so they're behind him, watching him I'm in fetal position. I mean, it's like I was really deeply distressed. And he's like, you need to go back on set. So
Yeah.
She has to. We literally have like 2 hours till sundown. She has to go on set, and then we can talk about this at Nick on Sunset, but we have to do this now.
Okay. I mean, I don't really think that getting a DVD player, which was apparently the wrap gift for everyone, and he just gave her hers early, is abusive. Like, sure, it's shitty and didn't help to calm her down. It wouldn't have helped to calm me down, but like, okay, something else must have happened.
And I remember looking around and going, wow, nobody cares about what's happening to me.
Okay.
And I don't feel protected, and I don't feel safe, and I'm scared. And now I have to go back on set, pretend nothing happened, and be around those who did it to me.
Okay.
So I get back on set, and unfortunately, Jamie and Victoria were like laughing at me, and we had water guns, and they started squirting the water guns at me on top of it. And so I just came onto set, and I'm like, okay, and I'm just having like, don't cry, Alexa. I just remember telling myself, it's just horrible, you know, like you look back at it, I'm just like, this is so abusive, and no adult was doing anything. And I'm sitting there having to tell myself, don't cry, don't bother anybody, you know. And
Dude,
so I
big
get off.
trauma. Big
Yes,
trauma.
yes, big trauma. And so then, like he said, we'll talk about this at Nick on Sunset. So I'm thinking, once again, I'm going into a safe environment. I'm thinking, okay, hopefully this time people actually care. Something's going to happen. We're finally actually having a conversation at Nick on Sunset. This will probably be good, right? No. So I show up there with my agent and my mom. And I remember I was sitting next to my mom, and there was there, and I was crying because it was a very upsetting, I was worried about losing my job, you know? And she looks at me and she's like, why are you always crying? Why are you always crying? If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't get this role. So I see Dan Schneider, and they are looking at me and go, you know what, since Alexa's so upset, maybe we need to have her in the room without her mom. Like basically shifting blame onto my mom as a tactic to get me in the room alone.
Crazy.
So my mom didn't believe. My mom was like, fuck no. So she
Okay.
goes out, calls the lawyer. Now the lawyer's in cahoots with Nickelodeon. So they do tons of deals with other actors.
Your
with
entertainment attorney?
Yeah.
So, oh boy, this really does get pretty deep.
She wasn't advocating for me. She was like, you know, Alexa, she was even telling my mom, we don't want to look problematic here. And so I'm hearing that. My mom calls the lawyer. The lawyer's not there, which I know why she's not there, because she doesn't even want to be there because she's working with them, you know?
Yeah, okay.
And so it's a conflict of interest because she has so many clients that are working at Nickelodeon that she wants to make sure they're protected. You know, it's like horrible.
Okay.
So she says to my mom, hey, you've let Alexa in the room alone with them multiple times. Like
The
think about
lawyers?
auditions.
The
Yes.
lawyers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't be paranoid, basically. They can't do anything to her in there. You know, that's kind of was the vibe. And so my mom looks at me and goes, can you go in there? And I went, you know, what the fuck? I'm so traumatized. I don't even know what's going on. And so I go, okay. And I remember going in, and I'm sitting across from like 5 Nickelodeon execs.
And you're 13.
And I'm 13.
Okay.
And I'm crying still. I remember Dan looks at me and goes, do you understand that it's called Zoe 101 and not Nicole 101? And I just remember him like, it was so stern. And I was like,
What does that have
I
to
don't
do with anything? Yeah, okay.
I have no idea, but it was that was their whole spiel. Was like, it's Zoe 101, not Nicole 101. It was like their slogan or
Yeah.
something. It was,
Okay, so there is also that, and this was already pointed out in my comments, thank you. But it really sank in for me during this watch. I think this is maybe why the irrelevant thing made her so angry in that live she did recently. Like, clearly that is an old wound for her. But it's also, I mean, it's a mean way to put it, especially the story about Dan saying nobody likes her. That's mean. But like Christy said, it also just kind of sucks but is very believable. And also, I'm sorry, it's not as horrific as anything that Jeanette has shared or what Drake Bell went through with a dialogue coach that was employed by the network. So like, as mad as Alexa is that she didn't get a book deal, this is why I'm always like, okay, but a book deal about what? And I'm not any less a book deal about what when she finishes telling this story, and I'm not any less, what do you mean, abused by Dan in a back room?
So I'm like sitting there and he goes, we cannot have this happening anymore on set. Like we just cannot have it happening anymore.
No, I agree.
Like, so then the girl, the woman to his right, I remember her just saying, and if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have had this job.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically making me feel that if I upset her, I'm going to lose the job.
Yeah,
it was
of
like
course.
that kind of,
I mean, let's be real. You already lost the job. They were
did.
going to try to take you out of the equation as fast as possible.
And you're thinking money and I'm thinking pain and like, how do I survive this kind of? I started crying and I said, I really don't want to be a problem for anybody. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want anyone to not like me. And Dan was like, no one likes you.
Oh,
he just screamed.
This just keeps getting worse.
So then the girl, the woman to his right, I remember her just saying, and if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have had this job. Mm-hmm. And so basically making me feel that if I upset her, I'm going to lose the job.
Yeah,
it was
of
like
course.
that kind of,
I mean, let's be real. You already lost the job. They were going to try to take you out of the equation as fast as possible.
And you're thinking money and I'm thinking pain and like, how do I survive this kind of? I started crying and I said, I really don't want to be a problem for anybody. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want anyone to not like me. And Dan was like, no one likes you.
Oh,
he just screamed.
This just keeps getting worse.
And I just went,
oh,
okay. And I remember getting up and I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I ran out and I just went to my mom and I said, I never, ever, ever want to go back on Nickelodeon ever again. And so my mom called. We left at that point.
Oh boy.
She was there about all of this.
Okay.
Which is so scary. And she was pressuring me to kind of put it under the rug.
Yeah.
And so anyways, fast forward, really didn't want to call to release me from
many different clients with this particular.
Correct.
No one's primarily focused on your mental health. So
correct.
That is what it is.
Correct. No one cared about my mental health whatsoever.
Yeah.
When that's why I had my protest sign saying Nickelodeon didn't protect me.
Yeah.
And that's just really how I felt at the end of the day was, I know people are going to focus on Dan Schneider, but really the accountability lies with Nickelodeon because enablers, abusers, predators, whatever you want to call these individuals are going to come and go. But what lets them and allows them to perpetuate the abuse are these institutions that enable and protect them.
Okay.
It becomes a safe haven for abusers. And they don't see any accountability. Actually, they see them getting rewarded and usually the victim getting silenced and punished. So when that dynamic's constantly happening, you're never going to get rid of abuse.
Anyway, Christy asks her what advice she would give to her younger self to finish off the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But what would grown Alexa do? Like, what would you say to your 12-year-old self? Is there any advice that you would give to her?
I mean, I've thought about this a bit. Probably number one, I would say get up and off the set. Like have agency over yourself and remember it. Remember your rights. Even though kids don't really feel like they have it, they do.
They do.
They can get up and leave.
Oh, yeah.
And they can have a tantrum if they want to. You can just be a kid. Be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so number one, I would say to myself, it was okay to get up and leave. You didn't have to go on set.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be number one. Number two, I would probably tell myself, that when you become an adult, you're going to realize there is a community that understands you.
Okay.
So I would tell myself, even though we all feel isolated in those situations, there is a community that actually cares. You just have to find it. And the way I feel finding it is actually speaking up. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we find, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what connects us. That's
Yes.
what connects us to our community is sharing our stories so that we can share our stories with each other and change, what we need to change.
And honestly, this is about progress.
Yeah.
And if somebody's standing in the way of progress, they're a predator.
That's what I say.
So don't stand in the way of progress.
Nope.
And
No, don't prey on progress.
yeah, that's all.
And then they wrap it up and close it out.
And I really, really thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you.
Do you feel okay?
I do. I feel good.
We need to support you. Where can we find you and everything?
Thank you. Oh, you mean social media?
Yeah,
wise?
where can we support your,
So Eat Predators, Instagram, and then Match the Source is mine. So I kind of use both of them to give information. So I would follow Eat Predators or Match the Source. And if you can, donate to the Patreon would be nice because that's what helps get us water and SBF and car rides for the survivors to be able to attend the protest. And also helps with the sign making. And so it really helps our movement. And so there's many different, there's a scale of what you can donate to Patreon. That's also a great way of helping us out because
awesome.
It's hard.
Awesome.
It takes a lot of organizing.
Well, keep doing what you're called to do and finding your voice. And thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Adam also read this, and I was already going to, and then I was like, oh my god, he already did. But I'm gonna read it too. Obviously, we're covering the same thing, so we're gonna end up coming up onto the same topics a lot. This is from Jamie Lynn Spears' memoir, and it's her side of this story. Unfortunately, the camaraderie of the show's stars didn't always transfer into real life. In the first season of Zoe 101, Christian Herrera, Alexa Nikolas, and I became fast friends. Kristen, who played Dana Cruz, and I clicked immediately, but all three of us spent time together on and off the set. On the weekends, we would have sleepovers, go to the beach, the mall, or just hang out. We were typical girls talking fashion and boys. Unfortunately, the camaraderie of the show's stars didn't always transfer into real life. In the first season of Zoe 101, Christian Herrera, Alexa Nikolas, and I became fast friends. Kristen, who played Dana Cruz, and I clicked immediately, but all three of us spent time together on and off the set. Alexa, who played Nicole Bristow, noticed that Kristen and I were growing closer, which caused some issues. 3 is the worst number for girls because invariably one always feels left out. Throughout the shooting season, we had our fair share of fun and fights, just like all girls our age, but slowly I started to feel like there was something amiss. Late into season 1, rumors about me began to spread among the cast and extras. At first, it was small lies, things like people saying I was mean or bitchy. Everyone was telling me that Alexa was the one making the false claims. I went to the producers to share my concerns. Then the rumors took on a more sinister feel. I got a feeling that a few people on the set were trying to stir the pot and perhaps cause trouble between me and Alexa. I was led to believe that Alexa told extras that I smelled bad and other things that I couldn't control. I would leave the set humiliated and sad. I cried many times after work and had to hide my feelings. The way her mother walked around on set as if she owned it and whispered to her daughter incessantly, seemingly about me, raised concerns. For all I know, someone was feeding her lies that instigated the problems we experienced. I began to suspect that she was interested in having me thrown off the show in the hopes that they would make Alexa the star. I did all I could to manage the situation, but over time it became more difficult. I went to the producers several times to issue complaints. After the first season, Kristen left the show because the producers wanted a change, and she was replaced by Victoria Justice. The cast realized changes could be made at any time, and I wasn't experiencing any whispers or unpleasant looks. Things improved temporarily. Alexa's attention was diverted by the arrival of a new cast member, but weeks into shooting, another particularly vicious rumor spread that I had lice. Some of the extras seemed put off, and I felt an unwarranted shame. The situation made me an emotional wreck and in need of support, so I went to my big sister for guidance. A few days later, a very pregnant Brittany came to the set to visit and have a chat with Alexa. Brittany asked a PA to bring Alexa to my trailer. I was on set at the time. Alexa, who was really into fame and connections, was excited that my sister wanted to, quote, speak, end quote, with her. The door was open when Alexa walked in. Brittany didn't waste any time getting to the point. "Are you making fun of my sister? Telling lies and spreading rumors? You shouldn't do that." Brittany told her that she wouldn't keep jobs if she continued to treat people that way. Alexa scurried away from the trailer. After that chat, Alexa didn't blatantly bully me, and once season 2 was in the can, she was dismissed from the show. She later spoke of being bullied on the set of Zoe. And as far as Kristen Herrera goes, she has also denied the claims that were made by Alexa that she was being physically abusive on set. Credit for posting that Jamie Lynn memoir segment to Kaylee XO on Twitter, the same Kaylee whose thread I read earlier. And I've got my Twitter source on screen as well for that Kristen Herrera denial. Really appreciate the people who are calling attention to that. Obviously, like, this is a lot of she said right throughout. It's interesting. And especially the Victoria Justice beef. I mean, she's a lot more explicit about feeling like she seems to have started Victoria's career when she's on the Just Trish podcast. But this video started getting long enough that I was like, okay, let's focus and just talk about the Christy Carlson Romano, Corey Feldman thing. So we will revisit this Britney Spears thing later in a future video, like a standalone one like this of the notable beefs. But we're gonna keep going for now. But that was I just wanted to do like a short little interlude and say like this is not a story that's universally accepted or that seems to have been backed up by anybody else on the set of Zoe 101, which of course would go along with Alexa's version of it if they truly did not like her and were isolating her, right? It's interesting. It's interesting that there is such infinite capacity for grace and forgiveness for Drake Bell, who was traumatized as a child, and yet there's no like, maybe Jamie Lynn Spears was also being traumatized if Britney Spears was being so traumatized. You know, there's none of that. So what we're going to do from here is go ahead and fast forward to Alexa's next video on this Christy Carlson Romano subject. There was some Twitter pressure that was happening ahead of this live stream, but, you know, she mentions it in the video, so I'm not mentioning it here. We're just going to go through together, and she'll talk about it when she talks about it. This video is still up on her YouTube, and it's called, in all caps, but I'm not going to yell at you, Christy Carlson Romano deleted my vulnerability? ? Also, a difference between what we just watched and this is that what we just watched was an edited podcast, even before I sped it up and cut out some of the repetitive parts. But this is just an Alexa Live, which I did edit down and speed up and cut out some of the repetitive parts because I respect your time. I know my videos are long, but I do respect your time.
I feel like I have been very emotional the last few days here. Definitely a little bit triggered, which I'm hoping that survivors out there will understand that feeling and have some compassion or some empathy for what I've been feeling. Okay, so going into today, the reason why I found it to be important to talk about Christy Carlson Romano is because she is honestly an example, a symptom of the entertainment industry at large, and honestly not just the entertainment industry, but I'm like speaking a little bit lower because I'm feeling, does it sound good? Okay. I'm speaking softly because I'm feeling emotional and I don't want to get into the tears quite yet. I just want to like get through this for a moment. Samantha, hi.
And this is like the second time already because I edited out the first one that she interrupts herself for a super chat. I called super chats paid interruptions in my first video about Alexa Nikolas. And as I said then, you know, I really don't have a better word for it. And I know that these are just common in streaming, which is probably why I guess I think videos about this kind of thing should be made ahead of time so that you can just respond to your super chats in your like premiere chat, if that's what you want to do, instead of just distracting yourself while you're talking about something very serious. Because they obviously do distract her. I mean, case in point.
So what was I saying? Okay, so my main reason for feeling like it was necessary to bring up Christy Carlson Romano is Christy Carlson Romano is like a lot of different people in not only this industry, but in the world, honestly. And what people kind of forget about Eat Predators, all of these signs behind me, is that I wasn't just going after the alleged predators. I wasn't just protesting alleged predators. I was protesting enablers. And enablers are, I feel like with the Me Too movement, there was a lot of more focus on the one specific alleged predator. And then the next specific alleged predator, right? And what I started to realize through my own experience in this industry was that these individuals couldn't get away with a lot of what they were doing if it wasn't for the enablers, powerful enablers, enablers with platforms, enablers with money, right? And it was a sad reality for me because at first I thought I just had to heal, not just had to, but had to heal from my predator. And then somewhere along the way, I got a lot of information and realized that there was an institution. There were enablers that were protecting him and covering up for him and allowing him to gain more and more access to victims. And that just added a whole other layer to my trauma, honestly.
Again, she went to Drake Bell's concert. She thinks that we should all see him as a child and that learning about his trauma should have changed all of us. Alexa is an enabler, like capital E enabler. I just don't want us to forget that as we watch her talk about how enablers were the very reason for Eat Predators and how Christy Carlson Romano is an enabler. Alexa seems to just consistently be everything she claims to hate. It's all projection all the time.
Enablers are also in this invisible realm as well. They're bystanders. They're people that didn't necessarily inflict, right, the harm, but they're helping perpetuate it one way or another, or they're helping to protect that individual one way or another. And so Eat Predators was not just about the alleged predators. It was about the enablers as well. I trusted Christy Carlson Romano when it came to coming onto her podcast to share my trauma with her, especially because you have to understand that media outlets sugarcoat your trauma. They don't really ever tell the whole truth that you told them over the phone or over a Zoom interview. They don't, because at least my predator or alleged predators, they have powerful lawyers that go up against these media outlets, and they block the story from coming to light. And it happens every single day. It's happening right now. I know of a few.
This is interesting. This part about stories getting blocked from coming to the light, that's very interesting considering how much she was taunting about something not coming out that was going to come out about her with that article Kat Tenbarge was working on. And, you know, I can make some conjecture here. This has not been verified to me by Kat. I did not ask her, but like, again, as I pointed out on Twitter and in my video about Alexa's Twitter meltdown, confirming that she's claiming that Kat leaked work documents, I think implies that she is being represented by Andrew Brettler. So therefore, did Andrew Brettler bury that story? All I know is that NBC killed it, and all I know is that NBC can't do shit about what I want to talk about on my channel, and I want to talk about this. Especially how she seems to understand how request for comment works as of when she's saying all of this, and then just completely flipped it around as if she had never heard of a journalist asking for somebody else's side of the story when she got those questions from Kat.
And now, just as of recent, around the Me Too movement, survivors' stories are being told. But who are they being told by? And for the most part, they're being told by media outlets that have these team of lawyers, right? That edit and cut out, shape it the way that the other side will approve of. And what do we get with that? We get half-truths. Survivors don't even usually get the full truth out there. They get little bits and pieces. And then usually their story, their truth, ends with the alleged predator's lawyer comment. And so when it comes to Christy Carlson Romano, this is a new age, right? Where survivors like myself can have their own platform, which I just started very recently with e-predators. And wow, it's been so liberating. And at the same time, it has been incredibly triggering and hard. Because it's sad that survivors are the ones that have to carry on with not only their story, but uplifting others' stories in the way that feels just and feels right. And I honestly don't think anyone else other than the survivor can really tell the story just, but hopefully another survivor can at least know how to make it survivor-centric.
And this pissed me off really, really bad, right? Okay, I mean, I know we still haven't gotten into this whole, like, what is Christy even doing to enable thing? We will, and I already told you it's about Corey Feldman, but, like, this pissed me off so much. Alexa, is it survivor-centric for you to leak the police report that led to the investigation of your friend Drake Bell grooming a teenager? Is that a survivor-centric thing to do? Is that a decision that you made with the thought of how anybody else other than yourself and maybe Drake Bell was going to get off about it? And not even how Drake Bell was going to get off about it, because what you did was put out a bunch of documents, again, that led to him taking a plea deal. Pleading guilty for grooming a teenager. Again, just, we'll go over more of this hypocrisy when it comes to Drake Bell, again, in a future video, because this one's long. I was able to download Alexa's deleted live stream. I linked to that in the description below, both of those. We'll go over them in the future, and I have cut a few pieces that are just like really, 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 really hypocritical from the Vulnerable podcast that, again, just we'll unpack at another time. I gave you the broad strokes. I'm going to keep giving you the broad strokes of this live stream.
But I didn't have e-predators as a platform when I went onto Christy Carlson Romano's show, onto her podcast. I was out in the streets every Thursday protesting institutions that were covering up, allegedly. Essay. It wasn't even just the alleged predators, right? Institutions, the enablers, were who I was truly protesting regularly. So when I went on to Christy Carlson Romano's podcast, it was extremely liberating because for the first time, I got to sit down and see a face, not just someone on the phone and not just someone on Zoom. I got to sit down with someone. I didn't know her well. I played her when I was younger. I played a younger version of Ren Stevens on Even Stevens, and that was the last time I ever saw her. But I got to sit down with somebody, and someone was allowing me to tell my trauma, which is really hard to do. And I know that a lot of people out there might say, get over it. No, but you don't understand how much it took me to sit down there.
And yeah, no, I mean, that is hard, but also with the benefit of the fact that a year later, now this episode had been taken down by the time she was recording this stream, I think Alexa kind of recharacterized what that conversation was like, whether maliciously or just in her brain. I mean, that's also something my brain has done about things in the past, once you're upset about something, you're like, oh my God, and that too. But like, I'm sitting down and bearing open my heart, and this is really difficult for me, was not the vibe of that interview. I mean, she did speak about some serious topics, but I didn't cut out like overwhelming emotion from parts that I didn't clip, you know what I mean? Like she was having fun, she was excited to be there, which is fine, and like, yeah, like I would be excited too, sure.
I love this reunion.
Yeah,
it's
like
cool.
a long time. She played
coming.
baby Red, and here she is, all grown up. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, your younger self.
Yes, very cathartic. I'm talking to my inner child about my yeah, very cool.
That's hilarious.
Thank you, Alexa.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
But it's just interesting to hear her frame it in this different lens now that she's mad at Christy. And what is she mad at Christy about, right? Because this is a year after she had been on the Vulnerable podcast. So obviously I've fast forwarded through a lot of the change from Eat Predators being primarily protest driven to it being a podcast, and then it going from being a podcast to it being the Alexa Nikolas show, because there was even differences at that point. So, okay. Like I said before, Corey Feldman, our tangential player here, Corey Feldman was a guest on the Vulnerable podcast in November of 2023. But the story here is essentially that friends of the survivors of Corey Feldman reached out to Christy Carlson Romano and then later to Alexa to say they had reached out to Christy Carlson Romano to say, hey, Corey Feldman probably should not be on this podcast. Here are the allegations against him. Here's what I've got. And Alexa felt very angry about this. I got complicated feelings about this. I got complicated feelings about a lot of things about Alexa. I mean, I understand her feeling about this, but as I said, even in my first video, even when I had more patience with her, I don't really think that going on a podcast once means that you then get to dictate the rest of it, which is very much the vibe that seemed to be there from the way Alexa was talking about it. But, still, Alexa was really, really upset because after that back and forth that we'll get into later, and I mean, honestly, probably mostly because of the way she was trying to weaponize her survivors against Christy, like that's just the implication in everything that she does when she labels somebody a new predator or enabler or whatever. I'm not doing that because my thing is Nuance Corner, but she is because her thing is eat predators, right? Like there's a difference. I know some people will say there's no difference, you're labeling her as bad, but like there's a difference. Anyway, Christy would eventually block her, but before that, Alexa claims, and I mentioned this in my video about her recent live stream, Alexa claims that she explained the cycle of abuse to Christy. So again, and watch that newer video for more on this, or hold off for my video where I talk about the hypocrisy of the deleted Drake Bell stream versus this new stream. She knew about the cycle of abuse then, and then is claiming that it is a brand new concept to her now because of this post-Drake Bell thing. She knew about it enough to explain it to Christy. She knew enough about it to tell us that she was explaining it to Christy and get likes and super chats and Patreon subscriptions based on, like, what a good advocate she was. And then once it wasn't Corey Feldman and it was Drake Bell, she didn't give a shit about this kind of consistency or moral continuity.
But fast forward, I get a message from a friend of a survivor. And it was heartbreaking. But one of the most heartbreaking aspects of it was that this individual reached out to Christy Carlson Romano multiple times. And Christy Carlson Romano left her on red. Now, Christy Carlson Romano didn't leave me on red when she was wanting me on her show, right? When my trauma was trending. But honestly, it's not even just about that. It's the fact that Christy Carlson Romano had the alleged predator on her show. So now I realize that the platform that I was on, I shared it with an alleged predator. And it was confusing because this alleged predator is also a survivor. And that is something that happens often, sadly, especially since survivors are silenced. They're not respected. The world doesn't have much compassion for them. And so they're in the cycle of ABUSC. They're in the endless cycle of it. And that can happen to a lot of survivors. A lot of survivors out there are not breaking the cycle. They never get the opportunity to because of how the world honestly treats survivors. And so it was very confusing to hear this story. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I'm protesting in front of these huge institutions that I consider enablers. And now I am somewhat an acquaintance to someone who is being called out privately as an enabler.
Alexa's upset about a lot of things in this live. I mean, she's upset about a lot of things in a lot of her lives. The job that she had with Eat Predators was essentially to go trigger herself on camera for money. Another reason, even outside of the harm that she's done to other people, that I just do not think Eat Predators should continue to exist in its current form, right? Alexa is very activated in this. She goes over some hypocrisy of Christy Carlson Romano. And as I've already mentioned, I'm not a Christy Carlson Romano defender. I think Allison Stoner is really the only person right now that I really know for sure knows what they're doing, or at least what they're trying to do, and is trying to work that into actionable change. I do really want to watch Child Star by Demi Lovato. I think that just came up on Hulu, but I haven't yet. But that feels like it'll be an interesting piece to this conversation, right? Anyway, Alexa is super, super mad that her episode of Vulnerable got deleted. Honestly, if you ask me, and you kind of did ask me by clicking on my video, right? I kind of think that that's what this real beef was. There was a level of beef to begin with of like, I am going to tell you that you're not allowed to have Corey Feldman on this show that I was on via Twitter. Like, I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna try to control this, and when I can't, I'm gonna be mad about it. But I think what really tipped it over into a grudge was her episode getting taken down. I mean, that's very clear in the way she talks about it.
I reached out to Christy Carlson Romano. I gave her all of the resources, etc., etc., etc. Nothing. Nothing came out of that. And I tried to explain to her, I'm a survivor. I explained to you everything on your show, basically. You know this now, or I hope at least you listened to me on your platform. I hope you actually actively listened to me. And I found out, honestly, that Christy Carlson Romano didn't really seem to care about it. And I even tried to explain to her that sometimes survivors can become alleged predators. It can happen. And that's why this work is really important to me, because I'm hoping also to try to end the cycle, to be cycle breakers as survivors, where we can just feel safe to tell our trauma without betrayal, or at least not such immense betrayal, so that things don't get buried inside where we have to act out and perpetuate or recycle what we had to experience. And she hearted it. Christy Carlson Romano hearted that part of the conversation. And so I thought, okay, maybe she's going to do something about that. I asked her to reach out to the survivor's friend, gave the contact info, etc. Nothing. Nothing. And this was months ago. This was honestly months ago. So I waited. And though at the same time, I began to get triggered by it, because it's very hard to witness someone else going through what you've gone through countless times and no one caring about you. And then I started seeing some messages around that she was kind of ignoring the community when it came to survivors coming forward to her about her platforming these individuals. And so here we are. I felt the right thing to do at that moment was to publicly nudge her in the right direction, to hear what I was saying. And thanks to a lot of people out there, my voice got amplified. The survivor's voice got amplified. The survivor's friend's voice got amplified. And what happened? She took it down. She took down Corey Feldman. But she deleted me too. So it's very difficult to be lumped into a situation with an alleged predator as a survivor. And at first, it was really triggering to know I was sharing a platform with that individual. And then to get deleted, like my actual trauma that I trusted Christy Carlson Romano with on the Vulnerable podcast. You deleted it when community stepped in and you had to act on it, and no longer in the privacy of your, I don't know, internal conversations. You acted on it really quick. And not only did you act on him really quickly, you acted on a survivor really quickly.
And it's kind of just like, okay, well, you got into a fight with Christy Carlson Romano. You're getting into fights with other people, not like making connections with other people in the industry, like especially, and I'm sorry to reference something that you only know about if you watched my 2-hour First Eat Predators video, but like especially given the fact that Alexa was like consistently beefing with the Ned's Declassified kids. I believe around this same time, I think this was pre-Christy block, that the Ned's beef happened. I don't know, man. I just understand why Christy blocked her, and I understand why Christy took down that episode.
Because up until this morning, his podcast episode was still on Spotify. But mine wasn't. I was totally erased. Those 2 hours that I gave you of my time, totally erased. And I find it really offensive because in my tweets, I asked you to give a percentage of my video to PAVE, a survivor organization. That's all I asked. Not for my trauma to be deleted. I didn't deserve to be punished for speaking up. I don't. And that's what happens. This is what happens when good people are in the industry. This happens all the time. When someone tries to stand up for the survivor, guess what? They get fired at the corporate job. And honestly, that was the power flex that I believe Christy Carlson Romano flexed. And probably because she learned it from the industry, since we grew up in the industry. And this is why it's important to be cycle breakers and not continue this cycle, because it's awful. And I don't even truly believe that's who she is inside. It's learned behavior. We weren't taught to take accountability of our actions in this industry. And it's sad. I feel sad for her. But at the same time, it's time to break the cycle. And so, obviously, if she's not going to apologize to me, I would really appreciate it if she at least apologized to the survivor's friend, who was so brave. She sent me the message she sent to Christy Carlson Romano. And so I'm going to end up reading that in a moment. I'm protecting her identity, and I just want to say that I got permission from her today. I asked for it, if she would allow me to do this today, to show what it was that she sent Christy Carlson Romano. And I think it's so important because this is what true allies look like.
It's just all of this rings so incredibly hollow when I know, just from the fact that I could have guessed, but also now from screenshots especially, I know people have attempted to reach out to Alexa and inform her not only about the victim she was aware of, whose victim impact statement she had reacted to and then deleted following the release of Quiet on Set, but also that people have reached out to her about Drake Bell's other victims, other ex-girlfriends who have alleged domestic violence and abuse. And she just doesn't care. She won't even make a non-statement like she does about the victim who got justice, quote-unquote justice, a lack of justice, really, because of this plea deal. She'll talk around that and be like, oh, I respect this victim's bravery, and then just not acknowledge the other victims. But I know other people have attempted to make her know about those victims, and she claims that those people, you know, like how she says Exposing Rich was harassing her, Exposing Rich was doing, like, a Twitter pressure campaign for the fact that Alexa was not acknowledging Drake Bell's victims. That's what that was. In this live stream, she says it was harassment. Like, it genuinely, it was not that. But she doesn't care about these other ex-girlfriends of Drake Bell, who Drake Bell was running around doing a podcast tour and accusing of being part of some grand conspiracy to keep him from speaking out against Brian Peck. She's left them on red, just the same way that Christy Carlson Romano left on red the friend of this Corey Feldman survivor, who Alexa is so insistent is deserving of an apology.
And so I admire that friend, honestly. And so now I'm really not asking for an apology from Christy Carlson Romano. You can delete my trauma. I'm sad about it. I'm hurt. But it's more important to apologize to the friend of the survivor that you left unread because, look, you deleted it anyways.
I've abridged a lot of the times that she said that it's the friend that deserves the apology from Christy. Like, she said that a lot, but in my opinion, it's pretty clear she's just trying to be magnanimous. You know what I mean?
Instead of a sorry, and I don't even need a sorry. I know that I saw some comments like, what makes you feel so entitled to an apology? It's okay. I'll live on. I don't need an apology. But I would recommend her apologizing to the survivor's friend, because what a good friend is she. Survivors want friends like her in our lives, where we don't have to be re-traumatized and reach out to someone about what happened to us, but a friend will. And a friend will reach out on our behalf. And that's really what I'm trying to create here with this platform. It's a bunch of that, where it's not just the survivors having to carry the load on them, you know, the trauma just by themselves, where community helps them move through life with a little bit more ease. Because I didn't get much of that. I had to do a lot of it on my own.
But, you know, that's really neither here nor there. Alexa praises this friend so much. She talks about wanting to foster a community of people who would be like that friend. And then, again, she is not like that friend. She did not listen to the people who are like that friend who attempted to stand up for Drake Bell's victims. And then she unlisted her video responding to that victim impact statement, which I personally just don't think follows this initial goal for what Eat Predators was supposed to be. Before, it was just a women-led arm of the Drake Bell redemption arc campaign. Like, it's fine for Alexa to leave people unread, but not Christy. It's fine for Alexa to platform and promote the work of alleged abusers, but not Christy. It's fine for Alexa to delete something that once had vulnerable details of somebody's trauma, but not Christy. And for the way that she accuses Christy of exploiting her and then later deleting it, like, holy shit. Just the irony of watching this now that she's taken down that video about Drake Bell's victim, it's a little bit too much. It's rules for Christy, not for Alexa. That's what all of this really boils down to. And even if I do agree with some of Alexa's larger points about the terrible optics and, like, thin moral standard that it would take to have somebody who is a victim of Hugh Hefner and who has told stories about the Playboy Mansion and her negative experiences there, and then later let Corey Feldman try to do, like, apologies for Hugh Hefner and say he's dispelling misconceptions. Like, I do agree with Alexa that that was gross, but I think somebody else pointed out to Alexa that that was gross, and she cared about it, especially once her episode was deleted. I know somebody's going to tell me in the comments that that's mean. You're allowed to think I'm mean. I think way worse things about Alexa.
But you're kind of like, wait, why is Corey so upset about the internet and upset about bots and what's going on here, right? Let's see where this goes.
He literally had, I mean, I've been under such brutal attacks. My Wikipedia page is all bullshit. All of it. Every second of it. Like, literally, if you go on that IMDb, or I'm sorry, the Wikipedia page.
He thought Wikipedia was IMDb.
First of all, it says I'm 5'5".
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that they've been pushing. That started with 5'3".
Okay, wait, why is the first... Okay, you guys know where he's going with this? He's literally about to go into... But he's starting with his height. And that Wikipedia has gotten his height wrong. So therefore, everything within Wikipedia is also false. So just starting it there, it's a little bit alarming.
So
Haters, man.
Yeah, it's just evil. But
Evil haters.
those aren't the worst of it. I don't care about that. What I
Yeah.
care about is the fact that, you know, when you try to look up my film, it will lead you to a link of BS stories of gaslighting.
So that's
Gaslighting. Okay, we're getting closer. So you can see he's inching. He's inching his way towards what he's wanting to communicate here. So he's starting at Wikipedia, 5'5". And then now he's going into the BS, and let's see where this is going.
but you don't
Trying
want to
to
engage
turn
with
it.
the internet too much because it's
Right.
not healthy for you.
Well, right, because
Okay.
then they start gaslighting. It causes PTSD and trauma. Do you know there is nothing more painful to a survivor of abuse than being called an abuser?
Oh, there it is.
But again, Alexa said all of this, and then the first chance she got, she jumped on the Drake Bell PR tour. And she claims it's different. And she thinks it's different because unlike Christy directly having Corey Feldman on the Vulnerable podcast, Alexa didn't directly have Drake Bell as a guest, which I think might have been as much because Drake did not want to be on the Eat Predators podcast. She certainly clickbaited him a lot. And even if she didn't clickbait like that and make money off of that and read all of the articles, again, even in that final live stream that she did, she admitted her whole focus changed when she learned about the letters of support that were written for Brian Peck. So, like, she literally She became Drake Bell's biggest warrior, really. Sorry to the, like, 5 other people fighting for that title on Twitter and all your little alt accounts, but, like, that's Alexa's job, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, fuck Corey Feldman, but also fuck this. But also fuck how inconsistent this seemed to be with her later morals when Drake Bell was doing a very similar sort of podcast tour with Justin Baldoni, of all people.
Wow, Christy. You know, I really gave you the benefit of the doubt. Even before and after my tweet, when I had to call you out about leaving this survivor's friend on red and then leaving a friend of the show's message on red about something that is a pretty serious allegation, and there are multiple allegations, I still gave you the benefit of the doubt. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I thought she didn't know. She didn't know when she did that interview with Corey. She didn't know. They probably didn't talk about it. Why would he talk about it? Why would she let him talk about it, right, without asking more information? And then you would think when the survivor's friend reaches out to you, right, that you would have known about it and now wanted to see the receipts for yourself, right? But no. You knew about it, didn't ask any questions, which honestly, you could be a better host. Honestly, in these interviews, I would have asked, what do you mean by that? What do you mean you have accusations of this? Can you say more? And I would want to know more before I make money off of the clicks from this person's interview. So let's keep hearing what Corey has to say.
I understand.
There is nothing more insulting and painful.
And I think people know that are predatory.
Yeah,
And
Whoa, Christy, did you just call the survivors predatory? Whoo, man. No, you did not. That was not your response. Your initial response was to say that the survivors were predatory, that they were preying on Corey. And let me guess, a conspiracy around Corey, trying to discredit him so much as a survivor that what? There are allegedly multiple police reports in regards to him online, alleged tweets, minor, etc. It would have taken one Google search, honestly, after this interview, before you published it, to make the right decision there. But no, your first response was that the survivors were predatory. And it really upsets me because I spent 2 hours of my day sitting down with you explaining a lot. You've seen a lot of my content, and yet I feel like I just wasn't heard at all. I feel like once again, survivors are just forgotten and deleted, erased.
It's really a shame that Alexa has obfuscated so much what conversations she had with Drake Bell behind the scenes, because it seems like she's giving Christy advice, and I would love to know what those questions should be, because I would love to know what the questions were when she asked them to Drake. I watched that Justin Baldoni podcast episode. It did not convince me that Drake was telling the truth. Just the existence of his key witnesses being somebody who's best friends with his mom, and then somebody who's friends with that person and no longer friends with the victim's aunt, also doesn't do anything to convince me. Something she asked Drake convinced her. I don't know if it was a can I have concert tickets or what, but something she asked or something she read in those documents convinced her, but she has not been forthcoming about what that was. I genuinely I would really like to know. I'd like to know what she thinks is more credible than that victim impact statement that had her in tears on her live. I would like to know what made her stop believing that victim and why she keeps pretending that none of the other ex-girlfriends who have alleged abuse came forward. And I know I keep saying we're not really talking so much about the deleted video in this one and then talking about the deleted video. It's just, it really gets me heated, especially with the hypocrisy of the way she's so angry about her episode of Vulnerable being deleted. It's such a betrayal to delete Alexa's cheerful conversation with Christy Carlson Romano, but it is completely fine that Alexa made money off of responding to a very vulnerable moment in this victim's life and that court case, plastered her face all over the internet, and then took it down when it would be pretty explicitly, implicitly, but explicitly implicitly, like the least that an implicit thing could be, that it would be understood as her changing her loyalties to Drake Bell. She thought she could have it both ways. She thought the rest of us were stupid or something, but like that is what the vast majority of her audience seems to have understood that to be. And that was at least something that was meant to be more public domain than this fucking police report she publicized. I don't care if this is something that other true crime people do. I still think other true crime people should not do this. I've made videos about how I think that YouTube true crime is irresponsible. Like, this is all very consistent to me. Still not reading those documents.
Anyways, I'm honestly pretty done with the Christy Carlson Romano performative content. And really, my takeaway, as I've looked through everything, heard her in different podcasts, hear her give platforms to alleged predators, then give platforms to the survivors, and then pretend that she's loving on the survivor, but then she goes around to the alleged predator and discredits the survivor she just had on her show. And I just find that her platform for a survivor is not safe, in my opinion. I wouldn't recommend a survivor to go onto her platform, because I would be afraid that if Christy did something and the survivor stands up for herself, himself, themselves, or their friend, that they'll just be deleted. That 2 hours of sitting down and trusting somebody could be just deleted, and they could be punished for standing up for themselves. And so is someone's vulnerability technically safe on the Vulnerable podcast? In my opinion, no. No. Because it took this much just to get her to do the right thing, and she still hasn't fully done the right thing, and now she even deleted a survivor while she was deleting the problem. So, just a bummer, because it does hurt my feelings. It's a bummer because it hurts my feelings, and it's a bummer because I don't want survivors out there to distrust more parts of the world than they have to. And now I know a survivor is going to be even more hesitant maybe about sharing their story to somebody, because it could be just deleted, that they could be punished for being a human being. That to me really worries me, and it made me shrink a little bit personally. Now I'm going to be personally afraid to go and speak to certain journalists or certain platforms or podcasts, etc. I am not going to feel the same way, and maybe that was important for me to learn that. But it's just sad.
So, yeah, I might agree with Alexa about the Vulnerable podcast. I don't listen to it. But I also agree with Alexa that that's the case for Eat Predators at this point. That I do not think that survivors are safe to share their stories with Alexa or Eat Predators, and that even survivors who did not directly share their stories are not safe from exploitation from Alexa when she thinks that it will serve her own causes. I don't think we need to keep letting that be okay. She exploited this young woman under the purpose of advocacy to begin with, and then she screwed her over because she became a Drake Bell apologist. I don't like either of those things, but at least if only the first one had happened, I would still think more softly of Alexa than I do. Alexa plugged her Patreon to finish and was mad that Christy Carlson Romano has sponsorships and she doesn't.
I'm good. I'm wrapping up. I didn't what? Oh, yeah. Because it feels so, feels so weird to be like, hey, I feel like I'm doing a Christy Carlson Romano moment, but she just gets to put like Volvo and like random things in there and has all these sponsors. Just to let you guys know, I don't have any sponsors on the show. And so all of you that support this channel really matter. And I am so appreciative of everyone here, especially because I feel very safe here on my own platform. After everything that happened in the last few days. And so this community really matters to me. And so ways to obviously support the channel and help make this sustainable for me, because I've dedicated my life to this work.
I also have a Patreon if you're interested in a way to support me financially. It's a huge help for me. Thank you so much to everybody who already has, either through the Patreon or the coffee or the GoFundMe situation that I've been linking to for the last couple of months. It has been a really huge help. I really appreciate it. I've been trying to do this full time, not out of like an unearned I can do this kind of confidence, but out of I'm a disabled 26-year-old woman who can't hold down work otherwise. So I really appreciate everybody who stuck around to the end and who has been watching my videos, who subscribed, people who suggest my videos. Somebody asked for a rundown the other day in like the YouTube drama thing, and I was going in because I was like, oh, I can explain and also maybe link my video. And people already had plugged my video. That is so cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I will be here again soon. I know I kept saying like, oh, the big long Alexa video, but I really think just like doing more digestible bite-sized pieces is going to be simpler and also easier for me to be able to put out these videos. Back on like my third or fourth one, whichever one I had initially called my final Eat Predators video, I was very hesitant to like have this be my niche. But I think enough of you know that even if this is something I'm focusing on, hyper-focusing on really, for right now, I do also cover other things on this channel, and I'm planning on covering other things on this channel. She doesn't define me, I just think somebody should be defining the things that she's doing, right? I'm gonna link my other Alexa videos down below, as well as Adam's, and a podcast episode. I've actually been in contact with the creator of this podcast, and we've spoken a little bit about this story. It is something that I want to talk about on my channel as well, but this is a creator who has also had an experience with Alexa, covering her story and then really just leaving her behind once that was no longer profitable for her. You can find it linked in the description below. I thought it was really worth a listen. Mind the trigger warnings that the creator included. But yeah, I'm working through and deciding in what order I want to cover things, and I already knew all of this from the first video, so I was like, I could just download them. I'm over explaining myself. Go listen to that podcast. You can watch Adam's videos. You can catch up on any of my videos you may have missed, and there will be new ones soon. Thank you so much for watching. I love you very much. Bye.